Okay guys, in today's video we're going to be taking another look at Bitcoin. There's some interesting news articles that have cropped up that I think is worth noting, and obviously we are going to take a look at the Bitcoin charts as well to see what could be on the horizon in the long term and the short term. Guys, as we get into this video, if you find it useful, informative, do go ahead and hit that like button. I really do appreciate that. If you're new, make sure that you have subscribed, hit the bell, tapped on all notifications, and you won't miss another Bitcoin update. Guys, with all this said, done, and out of the way, let's get into Bitcoin and see what's been going on most recently with BTC. So we're going to start things off with this piece of news here. This is quite an interesting piece and that could have, again, wide adoption of cryptocurrencies. Now, obviously, PayPal has already kind of gone out in the US and allowed basically people to invest in cryptocurrency via PayPal directly. Now, this was obviously only over really in the US, and now they're looking to actually expand the same kind of functionality over into the UK. And they also want to embrace smart contracts and obviously get into DeFi. This could be absolutely huge considering the amount of people who are aware of PayPal and actually use PayPal on a day-by-day basis. We could really start to see some mass adoption here for cryptocurrencies just via PayPal alone, let alone some of these other fantastic things that have been going on in the space. So I think it was back in 2020, PayPal secured a conditional bit license from the New York State Department of Financial Services to basically offer crypto services in New York in partnership with a cryptocurrency firm Paxos, right? And basically, the electronic commerce company enabled US users to buy, sell, and hold cryptocurrency on its platform. Now, you were not able to withdraw to external wallets and all that kind of stuff, but ultimately you're able to buy it and sell it directly inside PayPal. So this was a really cool thing to see. But obviously, PayPal had huge demand for Bitcoin and things like that. That saw huge demand that basically squeezed the supply of BTC. And as a result, we did see some fantastic price discovery off the back of this. So again, the in its second quarter report, PayPal had disclosed plans to expand its trading services to the UK following its incredible performance in the period under review. So it's doing really, really well. And here's a quote from CEO Dan, right? So we continue to be pleased with the momentum we're seeing on crypto. We're going to launch, hopefully, maybe even next month in the UK and open up trading there. And what does this mean? Well, this article is, and that quote is from July. So then we're actually talking about August. August could be a very crucial month for Bitcoin and some of these other cryptocurrencies that are also going to be available via PayPal, such as Ethereum, for example. So I think this is going to have a pretty good impact on the space as a whole, and we're going to start seeing more retail investors dabbling in with cryptocurrency, readily available via something that they're very comfortable with using. No need to get into complicated Binance, no need to worry about whether or not Binance is going to allow you to deposit cash onto the platform. And when I say Binance as the problem, I actually mean UK regulators. So actually what you're seeing here is a very good move by PayPal because they're able to now capitalize on retail investors who are being basically squeezed out of the market. They're either being shaken out already or they're being prevented from investing in cryptocurrency, right? So from the UK standpoint, this is absolutely fantastic news to see more people of adoption and basically bringing in fresh retail investors into the crypto space from the UK. So this is going to be pretty good stuff to see. Now, I'm not going to read the rest of the article in detail. It does go on to a little bit of why I talked about the possibilities to add DeFi into its platform. I'll just read the quote, so we won't go into it in detail, but how we can use smart contracts more effectively. How can we digitalize assets and open those up to consumers that may not have had access to them before? There are some interesting DeFi applications as well, and we are working hard. So there's some interesting things I feel to come here from PayPal, and the implications of this into the crypto space is absolutely huge. So good stuff to see. We'll be really keen to see how things actually do play out. Are we going to see that in August? It's going to be a fantastic time if we do. The other thing that I thought was also worth kind of bringing up is this one. I found this quite humorous myself, although it is a very serious issue. The IMF has warned against the adoption of cryptocurrency as legal tender. Now, obviously, this is humorous to us in the crypto space because it does obviously mean that we're finally actually starting to really affect the IMF, right? And ultimately these central banks, and it is basically central banks that are the main concern, not the retail banks or things like that, but basically the central banks, the ones who are creating those central bank digital currencies, right? That's the ones who are really going to be concerned over whether or not crypto becomes a legal tender. It's not the retail banks, it's going to be the central banks. Now, ultimately, the IMF have warned against the adoption. Obviously, those central banks are going to be paying attention, the governments are going to be paying attention to what the IMF is saying. So it is a bit of an issue for us, but it is humorous to me because it does indicate that we are actually starting to make a serious impact against these central banks, right? And ultimately, if we really break it down into kind of what we're trying to achieve, or what was trying to be set out and achieved by Bitcoin, was basically to remove these entities from our lives, right? We'll be able to peer-to-peer transact with each other and get out of the system that has been created to keep us as slaves. So ultimately, this is a fantastic thing, the cryptocurrency space, and we can see CBDCs as a way to them to try to bridge that gap and still maintain control. So for the masses, I don't think a lot of things are actually going to change. We're still going to see these CBDCs be developed. We've already seen the roadmaps for these, and we know that 2025 is going to be an absolutely key year for central bank digital currencies and mass adoption of cryptography and blockchain tech in general. What this means, however, is that the masses are going to be pretty much kept in the dark, and they're just going to be using a digitalized version of the fiat currency. Now, I know there's people out there talking about how money is already digitalized. I don't think those people actually generally understand what it means to actually have a blockchain technology running in the background, and ultimately the fiat currency being digitalized and what impact that actually has, because ultimately it has a huge impact on the retail banks and retail investors into various different assets and things like that, and it makes things actually a little bit easier and more efficient globally. So there's huge benefits that come from blockchain technology, and I've only named a handful of them. And obviously the CBDCs are just a way for central banks to maintain their control over the masses. Now, obviously, for the 1% who are already in the crypto space, we know that we do not need central banks. We obviously need a way to be able to transact with cryptocurrency in the real world. And this is what the IMF are trying to get at here. By preventing cryptocurrency being classed as a legal tender, you're then actually subjected to businesses and enterprises actually willing to accept cryptocurrency as a form of payment. We obviously saw this with Tesla most recently, although they have currently put that on hold. They might get back into Bitcoin payments. We obviously, El Salvador wanting to have Bitcoin as legal tender is a huge milestone and a step forward. But of course, that comes with great risk to of these power-hungry central banks around the world. So this is a bit of a warning that the IMF is saying, and obviously this is really geared up towards creating fear for everybody else. But ultimately, what they're trying to do here is get the governments to prevent things like Bitcoin or Cardano's ADA becoming legal tender. And if they were successful in this mission, they continue to have control and are able to monopolize people. Obviously, if we do actually get to a place where cryptocurrencies become legal tender, central banks and themselves will obviously have to get on board and find new ways to control people and ultimately control the flow of money. Now, I think ultimately for the masses, we're not going to have huge widespread adoption to the level where people understand blockchain technology inside and out, but there is going to be obviously adoption of CBDCs in the future. So despite this warning, obviously we've seen the roadmaps. We know that a lot of centralized banks are already working on their CBDCs. They're going to be trying to keep up with what is going on over in China with the digital yen and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to happen. It's an inevitability. But obviously these CBDCs also pose a bit of a risk to what the idea and what the concept was around digital currencies in general. So it's always good to be aware of what's going on, and I found this one interesting. I obviously found it quite humorous because it means that we're actually finally getting to these guys, but again, it doesn't really change too much for us. We obviously know that CBDCs are going to happen, and we know that the masses are not really going to understand what blockchain technology is, and they're just going to basically use a digitalized version of a currency that they've already used, right? They might even not even bother to know that there is a difference in the technologies underlining the currency that they're using. So it's an interesting piece. Again, don't read it in general for you guys, but you can check it out. It's on Crypto News Flash if you want. Now, the other thing that I saw, which was really cool, which was this one, MicroStrategy planning to further its Bitcoin acquisition strategy despite the recent Bitcoin struggles, right? And this is something that we often talk about on the channel because there are a lot of institutions who have been buying the dip, buying the fear. And basically, once they formed these patterns within the charts, the Wyckoff redistribution, for example, the Wyckoff accumulation, shaking out retail investors, tricking people into thinking that Bitcoin is going down to some really, really low areas, and ultimately people thinking they could take advantage of this by selling high and buying back down cheap. Obviously, that doesn't always work out, and ultimately the institutions behind these kind of manipulations and these moves have been accumulating Bitcoin and keeping it at very specific levels, and then preventing those people who sold to buy back in. And if they were to buy back in, it would have cost them more money, and ultimately shake them out again, potentially at a later stage. We often call these people paper hands and things like that. Now, ultimately, if you've been following my Bitcoin charts, you'll know that actually when we're so oversold, you can't actually drop down any lower before you had to actually push the price up in order to push the price back down lower if that was something that we were going to see. Obviously, with everything that's been going on, and obviously with the shift in the narrative, 2 months of kind of decrease in price and sideways trading, we've got a recent kind of recovery coming kind of on its track at the moment. But we do obviously need to see it pierce that 42k area. That's going to be the major kind of support that we want to turn, right? So it's a resistance line at the moment. We want to turn it into a support line. And once we get that, then Bitcoin's really off on to the races, right? But until that happens, it's going to be really difficult to say definitively whether or not a new lower low is due. And now we have actually moved the needle from being 0.12 on that stochastic relative strength index. It does actually indicate now that we're actually moving out of the oversold area into a pretty comfortable area. So we could see a correction at any point. So obviously we're mindful of that. But what does this mean? Well, ultimately we have MicroStrategy continuing to acquire Bitcoin during these dips, continuously buying these dips. And MicroStrategy is just one of many. Now, the thing that we've been talking about a lot was during a lot of this nonsense and this kind of FUD that's been out there about Bitcoin dropping down to maybe 10k, 15k, 20k, etc. All these quite low numbers that are not supported technically, at least not yet anyway. Those scenarios, they kind of allow these institutions to kind of buy the dip. Now, would these institutions buy Bitcoin knowing that they're going to lose money? This is the question that we have to ask. Are these institutions and are these CEOs, are these hedge fund managers stupid? Right? I'll ask it flat out. Are they stupid? Do they know what they're doing? Are they buying it too high when they could buy it down at 10k, 15k, 20k? Are they that stupid that they'll rather pay 30k, 35k, 40k, whatever, right? The quickest answer to that is no, they're not stupid. They're the ones actually controlling the flow of Bitcoin, right? They're doing over-the-counter trades, and they're putting Bitcoin onto the exchanges, but not selling it and then pulling it off the exchanges. And what they're doing here are very common strategies and tactics to basically shake out retail investors. They want Bitcoin to drop down low enough that they can buy the dip, but they don't want to buy too much of it that they push the needle right the way back up again. Instead, they want to keep the price nice and stable, nice and sideways trading, and accumulate over a period of time. And in doing this, they are basically buying up everything that you are selling. And then once they've accumulated enough, they can then allow Bitcoin to continue its push to the upside. And again, we'll get into the charts in a moment, but again, we take a look at MicroStrategy, again, further extending their position on Bitcoin, looking to acquire even more. And I think they've got over 100,000 Bitcoin, which is just, quite remarkable. There's so much Bitcoin at the moment, and they are doing incredibly well in basically continuing to accumulate. And they're not stupid people. There's a strategy behind everything that they are doing, in the same way that Tesla was buying it, SpaceX probably has it, and so many other institutions that we do not know about have been accumulating Bitcoin all the way through this. We can see this within the technical data, the glass node, all that kind of stuff. But we can see there are certain wallets that are accumulating. And of course, there was loads of stuff that was going on that was obviously helping the price decrease and get it down to these nice low levels. And again, we also had Elon Musk helping push the price down at times. I don't think he was the sole reason that the price was dropping, but he definitely helped it go that way. So ultimately, when we take a look at everything that's going on, we obviously have now PayPal looking to finally actually next month open up the UK to being able to buy cryptocurrency on their platform. We have the IMF warning about Bitcoin and Ethereum and just crypto in general being used as legal tender. We obviously have El Salvador wanting to actually run it as a legal tender. We have MicroStrategies basically accumulating more and more Bitcoin. It wouldn't be too pushed, I don't think, to think that Elon Musk is going to say that Tesla's now accepting Bitcoin as payment method once again. And we're going to start seeing recovery during the month of August. That's my opinion. We've often said that it was going to be the end of July, beginning of August. That seems to be where we are right now, and that seems to be aligning up quite nicely. So there's lots of things going on in the space, but let's also acknowledge what's going on technically, right? So we talk about the fundamentals of a project. We know what it does. We know how it works. We have to know about who is doing what in the space, PayPal, IMF, MicroStrategy. Now we obviously want to know how technically things are stacking up, right? And obviously here on the weekly chart for Bitcoin, we can take a look at the stochastic relative strength index, and we can see that we are just under the sold area, right? So we can see down here, for Bitcoin, we are still oversold on this weekly chart, but we have had significant correction to the upside, right? We were down here at 0.12, right? Almost flat zero. And again, when we take a look at these 5 impulse waves to the upside, the Elliott theory, we can see how low we were down here on our stochastic, right the way down at 1.3 when we were at our low point during the previous bull run. We can see when we peaked up, we were overbought. We dropped down into the wave 2. And again, we can see that we're right the way down here in this oversold area at 7.9. When we peaked up into wave 3, we were overbought. Dropping down into wave 4, we're oversold at 0.12. So we know that every time we are low, down here, we have a significant push to the upside. And that's exactly where we are right now when it comes to our stochastic relative strength index. Of course, things don't move in straight lines, so we have to be aware that things are will take a significant portion of time to actually get up there. We just take a look at this third wave, for example. There was a wave that came down here, but we slowly took it up. We came back down, we pushed it back up, and we actually lost momentum in the middle, dropping all the way back down into this lower area just here on our stochastic relative strength index before we then took it up one step further. And I think this is testament to the amount of manipulation that was going on with Bitcoin. There's many different areas where it was basically dabbling around, but things don't move in straight lines in the crypto space, at least not very frequently. And what you see is here on the stochastic relative strength index is minor price corrections here, but major corrections on the stochastic. So what we're looking for is a good push to the upside, a bit of a correction on our stochastic to then have that secondary push. And the targets that we're looking for really come in at $182,000. That's what's technically been indicated to us for Bitcoin here on the chart. So for us right now, everything on the Fibonacci retracement tool, the 1.618 is 87K, the 2.618 comes in at 123K, the 3.618 comes in at 160K, and of course that 4.236 is 182K. So the price expectations for this fifth wave on Elliott theory for Bitcoin is looking very, very attractive. Of course, this is the weekly view, so it's going to take weeks, months to kind of see this thing throughout and kind of actually kind of peak. Now, obviously, for the previous bull runs and the expectations of everything, we are talking about the end of 2021, usually December. And if we take a look at the history, that's when Bitcoin has its peak. But again, we use these technicals to give us a bit of a flavor and a bit of an idea as to what is going on at the time. Now, with this weekly chart, it's always great to know this, but sometimes those daily views actually kind of worry people, right? So it's always good to know what's been going on. Obviously, it was a Wyckoff accumulation pattern forming on the daily, and it was up until this point here that things really started to get interesting and it got deviated away from that pattern. I feel that the institutions realized that too many people were aware of what is going on, are now paying close attention to these Wyckoff redistributions and accumulation patterns, and now they're doing something different. What you are seeing though is a push up here. This is something that was expected way back here, and then we're going to pull back a little way before we go to 42K. So if we are now back on track for a Wyckoff accumulation, now they deviated it briefly, liquidating people who were shorting and all that kind of stuff. The expectations would be to come down a little bit, maybe to 36K, somewhere down here, before then going to 42K. And 42K is the true test. We want to see us push past 42K and actually get a closed candle above it, preferably weekly. That will then continue the growth. But we do need a correction on this daily chart, and that's because our stochastic relative strength index is overbought. So although we are oversold on our weekly, our daily is overbought. So we want some minor kind of corrections here to basically pull Bitcoin back in line with everything else so we can rerun to the upside and continue the push, right? So on our daily and our hourly, we're looking for some micro movements, maybe some sideways trades before we actually start to go ahead and push things up. And again, if we throw in the Wyckoff accumulation, we'll drop down a little bit, maybe to 36K, maybe 35K, push to 42, and then we would get rejected from here. And then a decision gets made somewhere around here about 32 as to whether or not they're going to go just short on Bitcoin, take it down to something like 28K, 24K, or actually take it up. And I think this is going to be testament as to whether or not we see people shorting or going long with Bitcoin at the time. What you saw down here when we actually went below 30K was loads of people thinking it was going down to 20, shorted Bitcoin. So what you saw was the institutions bring the price up and actually basically liquidating all those short positions. And anyone who was smart enough to actually put a long position on here would have done very, very well for themselves. So the daily is an interesting piece because it's not following any specific pattern at the moment. It's violated this pattern, but if we are back on track, there'll be some interesting days to come. But again, we are still looking to kind of close this out. In August, I think August is going to be a good month. We're going to come to the close of August. We should be out of this this kind of manipulation stage here, and we should start to continue the growth to the upside. Now, obviously, when we take a look at our hourly view, it shows us again a different pattern, right? We obviously have been heavily consolidating this sideways trade on the 40K level. We can see that we've had a pullback here, and again, this is because we were overbought. Where we're overbought, we've pulled all the way back down into the oversold area, and now we're getting this pushed back to the upside. So on Bitcoin right now, on the hourly, it's very much aligned to what our weekly is looking like, but our daily does need to have a correction. But if we continue this sideways trade, we can get that correction in the next few days or weeks. So really looking forward to seeing what is next for Bitcoin. Both on our daily and of course our weekly view. And if we're ever in doubt, it's always best to kind of zoom out, take a look at where we are heading, understand the stock to flow model. That's still intact in my opinion, although I know it's been a bit of an issue for many people, whether the stock to flow model was going to break, whether it was going to continue or stick to it. For me, it's looking pretty good. And again, if it does continue to be the way that it is, then it does mean that 2025 for Bitcoin is going to be a very, very good year as well. So obviously knowing what Bitcoin is doing, this really does help us understand how the rest of the market is going to perform as well. Bitcoin pulling back today does mean that some of these altcoins have also pulled back today. And if Bitcoin does start to have another rally to the upside, all those altcoins will also continue to rally to the upside as well. So there's going to be some fantastic price discovery for many projects in this space. And I think Bitcoin is going to be leading the pack for a little while longer just yet. Guys, if you have found this update on Bitcoin useful and informative, then do go ahead and hit that like button. I really do appreciate that. If you're new, make sure you've subscribed, hit the bell, tapped on all notifications. If you only select the personal ones, you'll only get notifications for what YouTube thinks you want to watch. Whereas if you hit all, you can decide which ones you want to actually watch and which ones you don't. So make sure you do that, guys, and you won't miss another Bitcoin update. Guys, with this said, done, and out of the way, I hope you have a fantastic day, and we'll catch you in the next one.